Crafting an effective pitch for your marketing agency. Lessons from experts. Dave, it says you're the moderator, but it doesn't matter to us. You guys can flip a coin.
Hi, welcome everyone. So my name is Anil. I'm actually president of NJ Find. We do real estate and financial services for small clients and happy families. So happy to be a moderator. So today I have Mr. Dave. He's an Nexus 6 founder, and then Joanna Kennedy. She is a vice president of Performance Review Institute, and Mr. David Frederick from uh, Cow Media, correct? Okay. So my first question I should be asking to Joanna. So can you tell me some key elements that should be included in a page presentation for a marketing agency?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start out by giving some context in that I don't work for a marketing agency, I'm on the client side. So what I'm going to share is when I'm being pitched to, what do I look for? Okay. And so obviously cost is a factor, but realistically, what I'm particularly interested in is relevance. I want to see examples from your portfolio that you've worked in the industry I'm in, that you've done projects similar or the same as what I'm looking for. Fundamentally, I'm interested in two things. Can you do the work that I want to the level that I'm expecting? And the second thing is really then the connection. When we have that meeting for you to do that pitch, do I think we can work together? We all know that marketing can be high pressure, there's a lot of emphasis on results. And if you don't have a good working relationship, I think it can be very challenging. So, making sure we're on the same page in terms of those expectations and the way we're going to work together, do we kind of click effectively? Those are the things I look for.
Dave, you have to say something on this.
Yeah, I always kind of think of it as, from the agency side. It's kind of just nobody's really kind of interested in who you are. It's kind of just get to the point. If I said, if I told this room like, hey, I started a marketing agency, you'd be like, well, congratulations. So did a lot of other people, right? So if you're there to, like, if your elevator pitch is bragging about yourself, most people just don't care. It's about what can you do for me, right? So your elevator pitch has to be about focusing on them and what kind of making them the hero of the story and how you can help kind of get them to that point.
David, how about you?
So I'm in a different place. We have a media company, and we're always out trying to get media buys for our properties. So if you see blood on my knees, it's because I'm usually down begging before the likes of Joanna here, begging for her media spend. But when we do pitches for opportunities, it's akin to what you've just said, but we really try to include case studies or other examples of clients for whom we've moved the needle and delivered success. Because obviously, and we don't really want it head-to-head competition because there's always the concern that then the other brand that came before, the competing brand, has already sort of saturated the share of voice to the audience. So we try to find sort of parties that are like, kind, and quality advertisers, and those are usually, if we can show some really positive case studies and success stories and maybe even testimonials from clients, well, we like to think that'll move the needle.
Yeah, that's always very attractive to me. Definitely.
So I have to say something, as a realtor, when I started onto the NJ Find, so I was always looking for an effective pitch because I wanted to call clients. So first line when we were calling was like, hey, we are calling from X company and do you want to sell? By that time, the people will hang up the phone. So then I came up with the idea. I thought, why not I just buy a domain which says what we are do. So I bought a domain, we sell home. And then I created a website out of it. And then I said, hey, we calling from we sell home. Now if they hang up, at least they got the message. So one liner, and then we started doing rental. And then we said, you know what, we do rental.com. So that how I just squeezed everything in a one line. And then sometimes people were curious, sometimes they came back, and that's how I started as a pitch. So now I'm gonna ask second question to Dave. So Dave, how can a marketing agency tailor their pitch to a different type of clients?
I think it's understanding who you're making the pitch to, right? And because every pitch has to, well, every effective pitch is a really well told story, right? Um, because I've said this before, nobody really cares about facts. Most people aren't making decisions based on them. You can give them a bunch of facts and figures, but really, at the end of the day, people are making, we're still humans. We're brilliant apes, and we make decisions based on emotions. And so, what's the best way to get somebody to feel something? It's through a story that kind of speaks to them, right? Like, you may not have wanted to get a dog, and then you see Sarah McLachlan singing on TV with the dogs. You're like, God, I want, I gotta save those dogs, right? And so it's understanding who your audience is and adjusting the pitch depending on who it is in the organization and what the title is, because a CEO has a different concern about the company than the CFO or a COO. So it's understanding who the person is you're talking to, and so an agency can kind of work with you to understand that your company, your offerings, the services, everything that you do, your brand has a very different story to be told depending on who your audience is.
So let me ask you, building on that, how do you avoid being formulaic, and saying, oh, okay, I'm pitching to a CEO, that means I have to, touch on these points. How do you make sure it's personalized to the right degree?
What, were you here yesterday?
No, my flight was delayed.
If you were, you would have known that I'm wicked charismatic. No, I said that
Enough
was
said.
no, so avoid being formulaic. I think it's, I don't know. I think if you go into it understanding the concept of how to interact with people and having a conversation, it's so much more easy to do it. Because if it's just, I'm going to read this script that I planned out before I went into this meeting, then you're like, whereas if you go into it understanding it's another human being and let's have a conversation about it and be willing, not so concise and rehearsed, and it's just go with the flow, right? So if if something comes up in conversation, pivot, make it a dialogue back and forth.
David, you have to say.
So I'd love to think we do that. I'm not sure we always do it right and well, but we're at least thinking that we got to deliver 3 or 4 things in a presentation. One is case studies. We always want to show that there are other companies that have had successes on our media platforms. The second is that embedded in that is that we're going to reach the kind of audience that the client wants. But the second is we'd love to have at least one great creative idea or idea that's creative and we're excited to tell. We may not even use it. To your point, if the conversation goes far afield or somebody only wants to talk about a different point or analytics, we may not play the card yet, but we'd love to have that in our back pocket, a great creative idea that we can bring to bear. And then third, particularly in today's media market, we feel this obligation to share economics, what kind of ROI we can deliver, what other prospects, if they spend X dollars with us, what kind of yield can they get out of it based on their product set and based on what we're seeing in other case studies. Because if we can win the analytics game, throw in some fun creativity, and demonstrate case study successes, then I think we're in a good platform to make the case for a sale.
Do you ever have concerns that you go in, like you say, with a great idea, that that potential client will decline you but run with the idea.
Not only concern, but history of that. Yes, it happens. I've got some bruises on for that as well. But I'd rather play the card at the right moment. Maybe it's not the first thing we lead with, because we see how the conversation is going, see if we're getting rapport. You guys have both cited personal relationships and connectivity and a desire to work with somebody as an important lever in your decision making. So yes, we might hold that back to see if the chemistry is unfolding, if the prospects are looking good, if we're getting positive energy out of the conversation, if our ROI has moved the needle and raised your eyebrow, then we might throw in that creative idea maybe as the icing on the cake, or the last thing, the straw that nails the camel's back, right?
I have to add something, so again, as back to, like in my case, I use a tool called Call App. They are not paying me, I'm just sharing. So what I do usually when I'm calling clients, let's say we buy leads and now we don't know who's on the other side. So the point is, I want to reflect as if like I know that client. So using a Call App application on my phone, so the minute I'm dialing, for somehow they connect and they show a profile of their Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. So while I'm calling, I'm also checking their profile and I'm trying to build a relation. So if I see they have a kids, then I say, hey, I have a kids, they go to school, and then if they like, they do parties, I automatically change my story as if like I'm a party guy, I do parties. If they happen to be in internet, then I automatically change my story like internet geeky, and then I search some keywords and try to connect there and then. But the beauty is sometimes when the client's calling me, I'm not ready. Let's say I called in a blue and I have no idea who I called, and I just, because I'm scared, I have nothing ready, so I disconnect. But when they call me back, that call app automatically tells me what's their name and their history, like LinkedIn. So then that gives me a room to like do some little bit tiny minor search real quick, and the beauty is it's a free. So just part of it. Okay, so second question I have, let me ask David directly to you. Okay, so what role does storytelling play in an effective pitch presentation?
So storytelling is certainly part of it. And I guess as I think about it, I said case studies, analytics, and a creative idea, and weaving that into a story is great. But I think when you mean storytelling, I think you're thinking. Uh, I remember that show Mad Men. The key character was so good at weaving a story about the needs of the market and how they could romantically create a marketing message that would be dramatic or moving and impactful for obviously bringing in the business. Um, I fear we don't do a whole lot of artistic, romantic storytelling on our pitches. I'll be curious to see how you all like them or react to them. But I note that when we're out making pitches, it feels like everyone's attention spans have gotten so short, and they're so focused on the next meeting that uh, we've got a tight timeline. And so a long-winded romantic story we would love to do and indulge, but almost don't feel like we have the audience that has the tolerance or patience for it very often. But I'd love to have you tell me otherwise.
You want to say, Dave?
Yeah, I think um I don't know, because I look at like Endgame, like Avengers movie, and it was like 2.5 hours, right? So there is the potential for people to have the attention span. I just think that they have to be kind of invested in the story that's being told.
Right.
So I worked in the tech industry for a long time, and so a lot, we'd go and I'd go talk to, the CIO, and one of the stories that I would talk to him about is like, if you implement these solutions, for him it would be budget concerns, right? So you can implement these these solutions, and it's gonna, you can kind of free up, x amount of staff, because it's takes all of the complexity out of it. Well, you don't talk to the IT director like that, because he's like, well, I don't want to lose my job. But you say, you put these solutions in place, and you're going to look like a freaking rock star, because everything is just going to run so smoothly. So again, it's knowing the audience and knowing kind of what they're what they're kind of compelled to listen to. Yeah, I mean, if you're not telling a good story, it's easy to kind of nod off. Or I mean, everyone's got a phone, right? I'm sure there's somebody out there that are playing games on their phone, so that's cool. I'm not offended. um, but again, it's knowing the audience and telling that right version of the story to keep them compelled and to keep watching. Because yeah, again, there's 3-hour movies, right? So
I think you're absolutely right. I think there's many ways to tell a story. So it can be, like you say, depending who you're talking to and what their imperatives are. Is it a financial story? Is it a story with data? So uh, yeah, I think there are lots of different ways, and certainly when I'm listening to pitches, I kind of a combination of what you both said. I'm trying to determine how persuasive are you to me, because if you can't effectively sell yourself and your story to me, then am I going to be convinced that you can sell my company's story to our potential customers? So I think the framing of it, it may not be like you say the romantic story, that's long-winded and so on, depending on the product and the time frame and all of that. But I think, yes, there are ways to make it a story nonetheless.
Well, in my case, actually, storytelling is a major part of my success. So every day, I always make up stories. Whenever I walk and talk, even I get a call, I always talk about stories, because there is nothing I have to show. Like I'm just like I started as a realtor, then I took a life insurance. Now I have a company, but the success of company is because every story is like a story, and I have a testimonials from a client when they talk about it, like how I was walking and showing homes and I made up my stories. So stories are like just to engross them, just to involve them, just to make them feel as if like I'm like them. I'm not like a shiny boot. I'm just like a very ordinary guy. I also gone through tough time. I also gone through the trenches. So I have a one story to share. Like long ago, someone gave me a reference of a lady, and she was going through a divorce. So she was like kind of very timid, very scared, like how she can talk about like buying a house. She was not even sure like if she is talking to a person, like especially how much she can share. So the story I started talking about, how some families I met and they have gone through same situation, and then how I helped one lady. She bought a house and how she was able to now nurture equity out of it, and now she's independent. So that kind of connected to her. Now on the other part, I also gone through some situations like those. So I put my story as part of it, and definitely that helped. Now that video she made as a testimonial to me, sharing my part of the story, and she became so bold and beautiful in that manner because earlier she was timid, earlier she was a cocoon, but now she's using that, and I'm using her story as a story to become testimonial, where like when someone is searching on the internet, that story comes up, and that's become an endorsement. So I personally think in a pitch, storytelling has an important role, I guess. So now the fourth question I have to Joanna. So now, how important it is for a marketing agency to showcase their creativity during a pitch?
I think it is. I think this goes to the conversation we just had about storytelling, the conversation we had about when and how to share a creative idea. I think it's important in minimally the presentation. Um, Nobody wants to see a load of bullet points on a slide, or something that you just read out. You think, well, why are you even here? I can read myself. So there has to be some level of creativity, but the degree to which that manifests, I think, really depends on the product, the audience, the time frame, all the things we talked about already. But I'm again interested kind of in the agency perspective.
David, you are in marketing, so can you add something onto it?
Well, we certainly try to come up with good creative ideas. We don't want to be empty-handed, and it's a little bit of a tension that we feel sometimes in when we sit down with a potential client or ad agency. How much time do we spend listening and discerning needs, finding out what they really want to do, whom they're trying to reach, and how they're going to get there, versus coming in with our best pitch, our best story, which will include analytics and include creative ideas. And so it's a give and take, and it depends a little bit on how familiar we are with the situation, the client opportunity. because we don't want to just come in and start talking without first discerning needs. But I've also had account execs sometimes sort of go in with nothing because they viewed the mission of the meeting was just to do a needs analysis. And I don't want to go in empty handed either. So there's got to be some balance. And we try to capture that balance when we go into conversations.
Dave,
I think um,
you have to give a long answer.
really long.
Yeah,
Oh,
really long.
bloody hell!
You have to add all your like
I
ammo. Like first thing first, like you have to see is like icon on LinkedIn. I don't know where that icon came from, so you have to add that up because to me that's also part of creativity. Because I kept thinking, like, so
the,
talk about your icon too.
are you talking about the Sasquatch riding a
Yeah,
unicorn?
yeah.
I just think that's probably the most majestic thing I could have thought of.
So define that, like, because to me, from everyone here and outside, he got stuck in my mind because of that icon. So that was a USP because before I took a flight coming here, I was thinking I have to meet this guy. Like, so you have to tell.
Yeah. What's
Well,
the icon?
Yeah.
what's this thing right here? Still healing, so it looks gross. No, it's well. So I mean, so I formed the fractional CMO, and then calling myself a chief marketing officer just seemed really kind of generic and boring. So I
It's
decided,
boring. Yeah.
yeah. So I decided to call myself a chief mythical officer,
That's nice.
right? And then I was like,
And it looks young too because that icon makes you look young. So
"Ah,
that
well,
personally, I'm
thank you."
sharing.
He is young.
No, no, no.
Oh,
Like
stop
as
it, young
a
man.
like as a overseas audience because the title looks very like hep, right?
Yeah.
So if, as a client, if I have to connect to me, you will look like receptive.
Well, and I think yeah. So I mean, I think you kind of with the pitch, you almost want somebody. I've always kind of thought of it as you kind of want to have the client or your prospect to kind of start dreaming alongside of you, like what's possible. You get them really excited about and you just give them like kind of that little taste, and they're like, oh man, this is amazing, and they're like, how do we do this, right? Because really, I mean, a successful pitch is when they start selling themselves, and so kind of telling them that story, giving that creativity, and then just kind of leaving it just shy of okay, so how do we do this, right? That's I think when it really kind of works is you get those kind of creative juices flowing, get them excited, and just dreaming alongside of you.
So it sounds like almost in that instance, you're seeing the pictures selling the vision, but not giving them the road to it, and they need to ask,
Well,
ask
then they
because
have to
they
pay you to get it done.
right
Yeah,
because they've bought into that vision.
well, I'm crafty like that.
Okay, so David, now your name also is kind of like can you say because to me your name like Gav is also creative. So what is the reason? Like, what do you think? Like, what do you thought about it?
Well, uh, so Gow Media is named after me. I'm David Gow. I
Oh,
know the sheet said David Frederick. Frederick's the middle name I never use. I
oh,
just go by David F, and then I let everyone fill in the F as they want to. Sometimes they want to use a bad F bomb, David F bomb Gow. But no, so Gow Media came because of my name.
oh. Now I
Nothing that
understand.
creative, in fact.
I was thinking weird ideas. I was like, maybe you love cows and that how you get Gav or something like that.
Well, I do love cows, for the record, although not what they do to the environment. But no, it was my father's name, obviously, so that's why I am
Good to
David
know.
Gow.
Well, what's the history like? What's the origins of the name?
So Gow is a Scottish name. So you think of Glasgow, and Gow
Oh,
comes from
nice.
Ah, okay,
Scotland.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
so if you want to go to Scotland, you can get the Gow tartan plaid there. I have Scottish roots, and that's the background.
That's
Nice.
all. My ancestors were just notorious for just making random things of no real purpose. Last name was Make
Yeah, I was gonna
It.
say,
It was a
not
bad
not
joke.
you
You
though,
can.
not
Dun,
you.
dun, dun, dun.
I didn't need the sound effect.
So I also have to add a little bit of creativity out of it because my company when I started as a realtor, so I joined a company called Villa, VYLLA, right? So I had a lot of options, go to Century 21, Keller William, but I wanted something which I, I just wanted to start with no branding, so I wanted to create my own branding. So I took a nameplate with my nameplate is Villa NJ. So even my company is Villa, they don't pay me as a royalty, but everyone in my area, they thinks I own that company. So that gives me a little edge. Second thing is, like, I'm from India, so in Indian culture, there is a word called Vela. Vela is basically the person who do nothing, like basically he's free. So when I go and meet people, they say, "Oh, what is this company?" Because no one knows about this company in my area, like where I wanted to start. So I say, "Oh, I'm Vela. My company is Vela. I'm free. You just hire me. I'm always available." So and then even if I leave, they just sits in their mind. They think, that was funny. Someone created a company just because of the name, but that's not my company. But I use it. So I just wanted to share as a creativity. Okay, so now I'm gonna ask a question to Dave. Dave, how can agencies build trust and credibility with clients by proactively addressing potential objections or hesitations?
Uh, yeah, I think just um, admitting to the fact that there's never going to be a perfect solution for every problem. I think as long as you're having willing to have awkward conversations, because not everything you do or throw out is going to work, and understanding that kind of going in and willing to say, just guess being humble enough to just say, yeah, it's I'm not everything works all the time the way I want it to. Would it be great if it did, but understanding that there's nothing worse than going in, um, and again, kind of back to more the analytics is you can use analytics and data to tell whatever story you want, right? As marketers, that's what we do. And if you just bring the data and you're like, oh, well, I'm going to highlight these factors because this makes me look awesome, right? Whereas if you're like, if you're willing to admit, like, yeah, it's not great, this didn't work, and let's pivot. I think that kind of going into it with the impression of it's a moving target and we're not going to get a bullseye every time, but we're at least going to keep adjusting.
How about you, Joanna? It's up.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, again, on the client side, you don't want an agency to come in and say, "Yeah, we're going to spend your money, and it might work, and it might not, and it's got to be a bit trial and error." It's not what you want to hear, but at the same time, it is realistic. And I think as long as it's not presented as just say we're going to throw a load of cards in the air and see what happens, there is an actual plan, and there will be milestones and KPIs, and it's a structured, like an estimated guess rather than just see what happens. Then I think it's reasonable.
Yes, and the humility can be on the backside. I like to think that on the front side, in that we don't know the perfect marketing plan for any client, any situation, right? But we really want to make thoughtful, intelligent bets, and we're placing bets, and hopefully they're really, really smart bets. They're reasoned bets. They're based on what we know from our history, where the demo is that we're trying to reach, and will the platforms reach them with consistency. We can make smart bets. But on the backside, the number one thing, I'm just surprised how often people spending ad dollars don't really measure results with great rigor. And so if you make a smart bet and you measure results on the back end, and then you use those results to make more intelligent bets in the next iteration, and you get better and better as you go along, I think our clients have found, the spirit of that collaboration and that humility at the outset, but the rigor of tracking on the backside, and then the opportunity to pivot and course correct to yield even better outcomes going forward. That seems to be a path that resonates with our clients pretty well.
Wow. Okay, so I will like to add, because as a small entity when I started, the trust was the main factor which basically helped me out to build my reputation. So someone actually, while I was started down the line, someone gave me a very good tip. I'm just sharing that. One person told me to go and watch a movie Yes Man from Jim Carrey. So before that movie, I always had a big nose. I used to have a cubicle, so I always had a door shut. I used to be like obnoxious, nasty, where someone walk in and if they are not saying, I will like you not entertain. I used to fly out as of like if there is no business class available, then I'm not flying. But when I got laid off, everything like became a reality now because now I have to survive on my own. I have to spend my own money. I started liking economy. I started doing everything. So now to part like only survival, which I did from that movie, Yes Man, because to the beginning the Yes Man I followed. As of today I never said no. That how I feel because no, it became so difficult for me to say now. So and that is something becoming a trustworthy for my clients because they see as if like I will pick up my call. Second thing someone gave me idea is like if someone calling you because there is nothing else, just pick up a call same minute. So two factors help me out to build a trust. So for picking a phone and available now, the good part about trust is this is another thing I've seen lately. Once you build a trust, you can replicate yourself in any field. Let's say now if I can wear any other hat, if I using the same trust, if I become an insurance agent, if I start a IT company, or if I start with any other company, they will see as a trust. So same thing happens with the brand. Like Apple, they started with their phone, right? Now Apple phone, now they can add any product in on their website. Only thing they have to do is just put a tab. Now they selling a audio phone device, anything, and they sell because Apple is a brand now. So does that make sense? So that's how I think like trust and objections, also feedback helps. That's how I felt in my industry. Okay, so now a couple of questions I have basically just you shared. Thank you so much for adding those questions because so how important it is to get a feedback about your pitch. I'm gonna ask you because you gave that.
Okay, well, like I said, being on the client side, I'm more likely to be the one giving the feedback. Um, so I'm putting myself in other people's shoes, and I'll be interested in their perspective. But I think to receive honest but professional and kind feedback is probably very valuable. What would you say?
As long as it doesn't hurt my feelings.
No promises.
No, I think unless you're willing to accept feedback and grow from it, you only go so far, right? Like if you make a shitty pitch, and then somebody's like, "Yeah, no, that was great." Like I was never going to become a better person living with my mom because she was just like, "Oh, you're amazing. You can do anything," and you're like, "Oh, thanks, mom." And then you get out in the real world, and they're like, "No, dude, you suck. You're fired." And you're like, "What? Mom thinks I'm awesome." Um, so unless you're willing to take the feedback and understand, like you're like, there's some people that left high school that still think they're cool, and I don't understand them. Like you have to get into this world where it's just like, no, like you're not as cool as you think you are, and you need to be better. And so unless you're willing to accept that, you're you're gonna lose the same deal every single time.
We have in my company is saying if you want to give someone feedback about something, you say, I'd like to give you a gift. Because it is actually for your benefit, right? I could say nothing and you won't improve and you won't know. So it's like you said, a kind of nice way of doing it. What do you think, David?
Oh, absolutely. You learn more from your losses than your wins, right? So getting that feedback can be very valuable, and particularly if you can get it from someone who will offer it frankly and forthcomingly. 'Cause sometimes it's a struggle to really get the real story out, right? We're asked, but we don't get it all. So it's wonderful. I mean, and I was thinking about my own professional career. The, the era of my career when I developed the most in terms of capabilities and growth was when I was getting consistent feedback that included development needs. So the process was typically 3 areas of strengths and accomplishment, but 3 areas of development needs. And most of the conversation was about those development needs. So to get that feedback really enables the growth that we all aspire to achieve.
Yeah, you remind me actually. I know when I was at school, maybe I was about 12, and I got an A on some assignment, and I said to the teacher, "Oh, thank you." And he said, "Don't ever thank me, for your hard work that you did well. You should thank me when I give you a bad grade because that tells you, you can improve." So yeah, I agree. And Neil, what about you?
Wow. Well, okay. Actually, feedback is a very important parameter of in our industry because we have, as I said, I'm not a brand. There is nothing I'm selling. I'm selling others people property, others people like products. So what they are looking is how I performed in with the other clients of mine. So Before that, I had no idea that I never asked anyone like how they feel about me. It is all about me. You know, I have a big nose. Here I'm sitting. You come to me. That's it. That's how I shut the door. But now it's totally opposite. It's like, asking and thinking them before even thinking about you. So feedback is like, to the last entity till the job is done. Let's say in a home, when we are showing a home to the home sold, it always have to be 180-degree kind of a review, because one incident, let's say if I'm late, if the inspection is wrong, if the client is not happy, if I mess up, I don't pick up a call, the feedback could be negative, right? So that made me learn that the patience is a very important parameter. And second thing is, I learned very hard way, when someone is making you upset, you don't need to respond same time. It's like I started liking the Petrov methodology. So if someone is calling me, I sometimes listen, and if I have to give their feedback, let's say someone is making me upset, right? So I don't go back same day. I sleep over it. I take a shower, and next day I feel like it, and then I realize this is not even important. I don't need to get nasty, and then I take it as a positive. I learn, and then I started appreciating them. They were actually helping me out. Yeah, it was my mistake, because sometimes the gradual feedback makes you chisel bit slice by slice, slice by slice, to a point you become perfect. And I think so. In my case, whenever I send anything, I send an email. There is a link on the bottom. Please review me. Please give me a feedback. But it's risky too. Sometimes people are nasty. They give you right away. They can kill your brand. But that's how you learn from the mistakes. So that's how I feel. But that was a very good question. So I missed it. Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, because this is very important. Because okay, so one question again that came from Joanna. Joanna, so I'm going to ask you again. How, okay, has there been a time you thought you had lost or won a pitch but didn't, and what happened? And what did you learn from it?
Well, again, being client side, I guess I can only go back to an experience that I got through one of my qualifications, my marketing qualifications. So we had a group project and we had to uh, pitch Microsoft. It wasn't real, but pitch Microsoft, for something. And we were I was very fortunate because we were randomly put in groups, and my group was very enthusiastic, and we assigned our roles, and we really worked hard on the pitch. And one of the things that certainly would convince, well, not convince me, but would be a check in the box, is we actually got some branded cookies made. We created a fake company, and we really went in, and we actually kind of won the pitch, and got over 95%. And so we it wasn't a surprise. We put in a load of hours and a load of creativity and work. So, but like I say, this is this is academic, not real life. So it was more a question, I think, for the rest of you. So David, do you want to start?
Well, so if the premise is yes, have we ever made a pitch where we didn't think we got it, but then later came to find that we did get it? And I guess that's happened. Well, it's happened a number of times. It often will happen when we're presenting to sort of a group of 8 around a table. Because if you're one-on-one, you could sort of get a read on how things are going. But when you've got a group of 8, there might be one nodding their head, there might be one dozing off if I'm speaking. So there's always sort of that dynamic, and it's hard to discern where we stand. And we've walked out of some of those group pitches thinking, we just didn't resonate, or we didn't seem to move them, or we didn't feel like the chemistry, the body chemistry was that good. And then we've gotten the business despite our interpretation of the room. And it's one of the great joys. Actually, it's more fun to win when you thought you'd lost than when you go in thinking you're going to win and then just to win. So anyway, it happens. It's great, but I think the miscalculation where we walk out thinking we're going to lose and then we win is usually when we're presenting to a big group.
Mr. Dave.
I think we win everything.
It's,
We're really good.
keeps defining it.
No, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I try not to get, ironically enough, I try not to get too arrogant when you do a pitch, because again, it really, there's so many different factors. But I think the ones I have the most success with is um, if the relationship starts on a more personal basis and then morphs into a business proposal, as opposed to going straight into a business proposal, right? So, kind of selling, kind of, if they buy into you as an individual, and so back at the old agency, everyone said that I was a really good bellwether for whether somebody could work with our company, because if they could have a conversation with me and still come into the office to meet the rest of the team, it was a pretty good indication that they were going to work with us. Um, I've been referred to as a strong cheese, um, an acquired taste. So again, I think yes, anytime that I kind of started on a more personal basis, moved it into the business, I feel like it's always I feel confident, but I mean, there's always stuff that I feel confident about, and then they're like, "Ah, we decided to go a different way."
Well,
And then,
to add to your icon again, because I keep thinking about that thing, because the way his icon on his LinkedIn profile is, to me, that's like shows one message that I'm winning. You follow me or not, I don't care. That's actually a strong statement. So I learned something new actually, because just because creating icon, you threw a message right on a audience. That was a really strong message actually, just on a picture. Now on again back to this, because in our case, like I learned, sometimes you do a pitch and somehow you feel like you won it, but sometimes that winning is very short lived. It's a so like you I because when I started, to me even a simple yes was like a very exciting, and I used to get I'm like excited, and I will go and tell my wife, I will start telling my friends, and next day you think like, oh, that never happened, that the client is not even ready, he not even give it to you, and nothing happened. So now you already said it. But to my point, I learned there is a book called Power of Spoken Word, Hung by Tongue. So even though I knew that someone just said yes and it could be a no tomorrow, but I started like putting drums out there, because using a power of spoken word, hung by tongue, and I seen the magic happening, because when I said it loud and clear, and that's the thing started happening accordingly. So to your part, winning is winning. There is no option for losing, no matter what may come. So if you go strong, people start looking at you as if like you know what you are doing, and they start making their no into your yes. That's how I think that happens if you believe in power of yes, hung by tongue, and and power of spoken words. Okay, so I think we are done with the question. You have any questions?
I think I had one more, if I may. So I'm just curious, for those of you working, in agencies, what depth of research, recognizing time is money, right? You have to prepare for a pitch, you're not guaranteed to win it. So, how much time, in your opinion, is optimal, and how much research do you do on that company, on the project, in order to put forward a pitch that is personalized, that is customized for that business, but isn't overly burdensome for you because you've got other work to do?
I think when you've got like enough dirt on them to like print black and white photos and push it under the door in a manila envelope, that's that's enough.
Okay, thank you, David.
And by the way, we're gonna do business together because
Wait, you saw those?
I, s- I see a new alliance is being formed right here, and it scares me a little bit.
Depends
I don't
depends
know.
what's in the pictures.
Yeah,
oh, it's Vegas.
Oh, well then I'm good, because what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
I hope someone's recording this, please.
I hope no one's recording any of this. Go on, David.
What was the question? I know. So the question, of course, being how much time do you put into a pitch? You don't really know whether you have a 50% chance of closing or 80% chance or a 20%. And obviously, if it's 20%, you're probably less likely to want to put a whole lot of time in it than if it's 80%. But realistically, our philosophy is we should invest a really healthy amount of time into the pitch, even those that where it's a bit of a long shot, for at least two reasons. One is we'll be more credible for the next time we get a chance. If we pitched you and we pitched you well, even though we didn't get it, I think it serves the relationship. We come away with credibility. But then the second reason is just the exercise of getting ready, the process of trying to discern the client's needs, whom they're trying to reach, and then how would we respond to meet those needs, that exercise itself, which we're doing consistently, but it's a little different for every client opportunity. That exercise itself is fruitful and leads to growth. So yes, I think every exercise, the process, separate process from outcome. We don't always get all the right outcomes, but the process can be very healthy and hone the team's internal abilities and talents.
I think that's a great way of looking at it. Yeah. What
Any
about you?
questions for the panel, everybody? We have time for a question or two.
So, do you mind if I answer that question? Because I can correlate to that question. Because when okay, sorry. Okay, yes. Thank you so much. So, I'm gonna start from a raw, because when I'm calling my clients, I don't know, but I have a product like let's say I'm trying to sell a life insurance, correct? So I use statistics because a lot of people they have no idea what is standing beyond their vision. So they see a one vision means, let's say a lot of people are educated about 401k, 529 plan for their kids, but I didn't research. I have memorized those numbers. I have those numbers in my mind, and I'm ready for them to ask me a question. So I create a question, that question which they can ask me, so I have an answer. You know what I'm saying? So let's say I will throw a point. So they will ask me a question. Are you ready for your kids' education? And they're going to ask me a question. Oh, I have a 529. Now I'm ready with the answer. So I created a website, 529 plan exposed. So I know they're going to hang up right now. I said, you know what? Hold on, hold on. Why don't you go to 529planexposed.com and check? And how about that? Then you call me. So I throw something. So I created a questions which clients might ask me, and I created a very small, short URLs which are very easy to remember. So second thing I did is like on that scenario, let's say if I'm calling a client and I don't know what do they want to sell or do they want to buy. So I create a question so that kind of they can answer me a question. Hey, do you know what equity you have in your house? And then they will say, what do you mean? What is equity? I say, well, what's your address? Like I can check on my using my tool. Then they give me an address, and using that address, I have a equity. Now I got their address, and then I put a question. Hey, your equity is nice. You can like build equity out of equity. You can invest. Maybe you could buy a second investment home. That's how I start talking about it. Make sense?
For me, I don't think it starts with a pitch. It always kind of starts with a coffee and just listening, right?
Mm.
Because I don't know anything about you, so anything I would just pitch right now would just be shit that I want to sell you, right? Because I mean, at the end of the day, I'd love you to pay me a bunch of money, but I don't know if that's what you need, right? So it starts with us just sitting down, have a cup of coffee, talking, and then honestly, um, uh, just making sure that we actually like each other enough to work together. Because there's nothing worse than working with people you don't like, right? That's one of my requirements. A, they can pay me. B, I don't hate them.
Yeah, that's good criteria. C, they don't have photos of you, right?
There's a lot.
Um,
Use the app for Walgreens, get them printed.
I think maybe more formally, a way of saying it is, I think the first step would be a needs analysis, and whether that's something you do by yourself, without an agency. And what I tend to do whenever we have a new product is, why, who, how, when, just those basic questions, and trying to, for myself, think of those answers. And then I would bring somebody in potentially to discuss that with, and see, almost as a sounding board, like, this is who I think would be interested in it, why, and so on. What problem am I solving? Because that's ultimately the message. It's not about I have a thing and I want to sell it. It's what problem does it solve for people? And I think for me, before I would bring in an agency, I would want to have clarity on that, because the agency is only going to be able to deliver as well as you brief them, in my opinion.
So I'll agree with everything they said. I actually find it refreshing and almost more fun when the cake isn't baked, when it's a new product, new opportunity, open frontier, and there are questions about how to proceed. And it is fun to come back with those questions sort of likely target for this product? How do we go forward? What platforms make sense to do that needs analysis is really a fun part of being in the business. I mean, we have account execs who will come into a meeting and just push a product. Oh, you have to buy radio or you have to buy our digital platform. And then we have some who are really thoughtful and asking the right questions that lead to really good outcomes. And look, right now, at least where Dow Media is, we have enough breadth in our platforms that we probably have one platform that meets most clients' needs. And so I'm not really worried about pushing my particular product. I'm worried about making sure that we understand your needs and that we can craft a program that meets those needs very, very well and delivers the kind of impact you're hoping to achieve. So I think it's wonderfully refreshing. And if you get the right party, it can be a very, very fruitful conversation.
Thank you so much, panel. We're on time.
Thank you. Thank
Big
you.
round of applause for this beautiful, funny panel. Wicked charisma. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That was awesome. Oh, David, photo.